They say blood is thicker than water, that family will always catch you when you fall. I believed that for 67 years. I believed it right up until the moment I found the documents hidden in my own guest room closet, tucked behind the Christmas decorations I'd been storing for the grandson who stopped coming to visit. That's when I learned that blood doesn't just bind you to people. Sometimes it blinds you to what they're really doing. I'm Dorothy Williams, and this is the story of how the child I helped raise stole everything from me while I smiled and called it love. It started on a Thursday afternoon in March. I remember because Thursdays were my grocery days. Had been for 40 years, ever since Robert passed and left me with routines to fill the silence. I was putting away canned goods, organizing them the way I liked, labels facing forward, soups on the left, vegetables on the right, when I heard the key turn in my front door lock. Only 2 people had keys to my house. My sister May, who was visiting her daughter in Atlanta, and my grandson Marcus. Grandma Dorothy? His voice floated through the hallway, warm and familiar. The same voice that used to beg me for hot chocolate on winter mornings when his mama would drop him off before work. "You home?" "In the kitchen, baby," I called back, already smiling. Marcus was my joy, my second chance at motherhood after my own daughter passed from cancer when he was just 12. I'd raised him from that point on, turned my grief into purpose, poured every ounce of love I had left into making sure he didn't feel abandoned by the world. He was 28 now, married to a woman named Jasmine for 3 years, and I loved him with the kind of fierce protectiveness that only grandmothers understand. He appeared in the doorway, 6'2" and handsome in that button-down shirt he wore to his job at the insurance company. But something was off. His smile didn't quite reach his eyes, and he was holding his phone too tightly, fingers white around the edges. "Hey, Grandma, you got a minute? I need to talk to you about something." I wiped my hands on my apron, already feeling that flutter in my chest, that grandmother's instinct that knows when something's wrong. "Of course, baby. Come sit down. You want some tea? I just made a fresh pitcher." No, I'm good." He pulled out a chair at my kitchen table, the same table where I'd helped him with homework, where we'd celebrated his high school graduation, where I'd cried tears of joy when he told me he was getting married. "It's about Jasmine. She's pregnant." My heart leaped. A great grandbaby. Finally. "Marcus, that's wonderful. Why do you look so worried? Is she okay? Is the baby okay?" Yeah, everyone's healthy. It's just, Grandma, we've been looking at houses, trying to find something bigger, with a yard and good schools nearby. But everything's so expensive now. We found this perfect place in Riverside, 3 bedrooms, finished basement, but we're short on the down payment." He rubbed his face, and I noticed how tired he looked, how the lines around his eyes seemed deeper than they should be at 28. "We've been saving, but with Jasmine taking maternity leave and all the baby expenses coming up, we're just not there yet." I reached across the table and squeezed his hand. "How much do you need, baby?" "Grandma, I'm not asking you for money. I would never—" "Marcus Antoine Williams, don't you dare be too proud to let me help you. You're about to have a baby." "My great-grandbaby. How much?" He was quiet for a long moment, and in that silence, I should have heard something. A warning bell, a whisper of what was coming. But all I heard was my own eagerness to help, to be useful, to prove I was still a vital part of his life. "30,000, he finally said, so quietly I almost missed it. I didn't even blink. I had the money, had been saving it for years from Robert's pension and my own Social Security, living modestly, spending little. What was I saving it for anyway? "I can do that," I said. "I'll write you a check tomorrow." "Grandma, I can't just take your money like that. What if we made it a loan? We could pay you back, maybe $50 a week once things settle down." I waved my hand dismissively. "Baby, I don't need your $50. This is my gift to you and Jasmine and my great-grandbaby. Consider it an early inheritance." I laughed, but Marcus didn't laugh back. He just nodded, squeezed my hand, and said something I didn't think much of at the time, but would replay in my mind 1,000 times later. "You're the best, Grandma. I don't know what we'd do without you." The check was written the next morning. $30,000, made out to Marcus Williams, with house down payment written in the memo line in my careful cursive. He picked it up that afternoon, gave me a hug that felt rushed, promised to bring Jasmine by for dinner soon so we could celebrate properly. I watched him drive away in that silver sedan he was always so proud of and felt nothing but contentment. I was helping my grandson build a life. What grandmother wouldn't want that? But Jasmine never came for dinner. The weeks turned into months, and every time I called to set something up, there was an excuse. She was tired. She had a doctor's appointment. They were busy with house stuff. I'd ask about the baby, about how far along she was, whether they knew if it was a boy or a girl, and Marcus would give short answers, distracted ones, always ending the call with promises to visit soon that never materialized. I started going by their apartment instead, bringing food I'd cooked, baby clothes I'd bought at the thrift store and washed until they were soft as clouds. But they were never home, or at least they never answered when I knocked. I'd leave the food on the doorstep with little notes. Thinking of you. Love, Grandma Dorothy. The containers would reappear on my porch days later, empty, with no note in return. By June, I was getting worried. This wasn't like Marcus. Even during his teenage years, when he'd been moody and distant the way all teenagers are, he'd never cut me out like this. I called his cell phone one Tuesday evening, let it ring until it went to voicemail, left a message asking if everything was okay, if I'd done something wrong. He called back an hour later. Grandma, I'm sorry. Things have just been crazy. The move, Jasmine's pregnancy, work has been insane. He sounded tired, stressed. Listen, I actually need to ask you something. Remember that money you gave us for the house? Well, we found out there's a bunch of repairs needed, stuff the inspector missed. The roof needs work. The furnace is on its last legs. We're looking at another 20,000, maybe 25, and we've already sunk everything into the down payment and closing costs. Something cold slithered down my spine. Baby, I don't have that kind of money just lying around. That first 30 was most of my savings. I know. I'm not asking for cash. But Grandma, you own your house outright, right? What if you took out a home equity line of credit? Just temporary, just until I can refinance or get a promotion or something. I'd make all the payments. You wouldn't have to worry about a thing. Marcus, I'm 67 years old. Nobody's going to give me a loan like that at my age, and even if they did, I don't want debt on my house. Your grandfather worked himself to the bone to pay off this mortgage. This house is all I have. There was a pause, and when he spoke again, his voice had an edge I'd never heard before. Right. I forgot. Your house is more important than your great-grandchild having a safe place to grow up. That's not fair, Marcus. That's not what I'm saying. It's fine, Grandma. We'll figure it out ourselves. We always do. And he hung up before I could respond. I sat there holding the phone, my hand shaking, feeling like I'd been slapped. This wasn't my Marcus. My Marcus wouldn't manipulate me like that, wouldn't make me feel guilty for not putting my home at risk. But then again, maybe I was being selfish. Maybe this was what family did, sacrificed for each other. Maybe I was holding too tight to a house that was too big for one person anyway. I didn't sleep that night. I tossed and turned, thinking about my grandson, about that baby coming, about Jasmine, who I barely knew, but wanted so desperately to love. By morning, I'd convinced myself to at least look into the home equity option. I called the bank, spoke to a loan officer who explained the terms, the rates, the risks. It would mean monthly payments of nearly $600. My Social Security was $1,800 a month. After utilities, food, medications, I'd have almost nothing left. But it was temporary, I told myself. Marcus would help. Marcus would pay. I signed the papers the following week. Marcus came to the bank with me, helped me fill out forms, smiled that old smile that reminded me of the little boy who used to help me bake cookies every Christmas. You're amazing, Grandma. Seriously, Jazz and I were so grateful. He hugged me tight in the parking lot, and I let myself believe everything would be okay. The money was in his account within days. $25,000, secured against the home Robert and I had built a life in, the home where I'd raised Marcus, where every room held memories of the people I'd loved and lost. I'd put my entire world on the line for him. Because that's what love is, I thought. Sacrifice. 3 weeks later, the first payment was due. $612. I called Marcus the morning it was supposed to be paid. Hey baby, just reminding you about that loan payment. It'll hit today. Right, yeah, about that. Things are super tight right now with the move and everything. Can you cover it this month? I'll get you back next month, I promise. My stomach dropped. Marcus, I don't have $600 to spare. That's why we set it up for you to pay. Grandma, come on, it's 1 month. You're telling me you can't help us out for 1 month after everything we're dealing with? It's not that I don't want to help, baby. It's that I literally don't have the money. I'm already stretching my budget as it is. A heavy sigh. Fine, I'll figure something out. But Grandma, I thought you wanted to help us. I thought family came first. And he was gone again, leaving me with the dial tone and a growing sense of dread. I paid the first month, and the second, and the third. By October, I was eating ramen noodles and canned soup, turning the heat down to 60 degrees, even as the Wisconsin winter started creeping in. My sister May noticed when she came by in November, saw how thin I'd gotten, how the house was cold enough to see our breath. Dorothy, what's going on? Why is it freezing in here? And when's the last time you ate a proper meal? I broke down then, told her everything. The house money, the loan, Marcus's promises that never materialized. May's face went from concerned to furious in seconds. You need to talk to that boy. This isn't right. He's taking advantage of you. He's not taking advantage, May. He's struggling. They're about to have a baby. How far along is Jasmine supposed to be now? 7 months? 8? Have you even seen her pregnant? I opened my mouth to say yes, of course I had, but realized I couldn't. I hadn't seen Jasmine since before I gave them the first check, and that had been back in March. It was November now. 8 months. If she was pregnant in March, she should have had the baby by now. Unless she wasn't pregnant in March. Unless she got pregnant later. Unless... I need to go see them, I said suddenly, grabbing my coat. Dorothy, maybe you should wait. Think about this. But I was already out the door, driving across town to the address Marcus had given me for the new house, the one my money had supposedly helped them buy. The Riverside neighborhood was nice, tree-lined streets with well-kept lawns and minivans in driveways. I found the address easily, pulled up in front of a charming 2-story house with a red front door and autumn mums still blooming in the flower beds, and felt my world tilt sideways. There was a for sale sign in the yard. Not sold. For sale. The house was empty. I sat in my car for 20 minutes, trying to make sense of it, trying to find an explanation that didn't shatter everything I believed about my grandson. Maybe they changed their minds. Maybe they found a different house. Maybe the deal fell through and they were looking for something else. But then why wouldn't Marcus tell me? Why would he keep taking money, keep making excuses, keep pushing me further and further into debt for a house they didn't even buy? I drove to their apartment next, the one they were supposedly moving out of. It took me 40 minutes to get there. 40 minutes of my mind racing through possibilities, each one worse than the last. When I pulled up to the building, I saw Marcus's silver sedan parked in his assigned spot. They were home. I knocked on the door. Once, twice, 3 times. I could hear movement inside. Voices, but no one answered. Marcus, I know you're in there. We need to talk. Still nothing. I pressed my ear against the door and heard whispers, frantic whispers, then footsteps moving away from the entrance. My grandson was hiding from me. The boy I raised, the child I loved more than my own life, was hiding behind a locked door while I stood in a cold hallway begging to understand what was happening. Something inside me broke in that moment. Not shattered, not yet, just cracked. A hairline fracture in the foundation of everything I'd built my life around. I went home, didn't sleep, couldn't eat. The next morning, I did something I never thought I'd do. I hired a private investigator. A woman named Paula Reeves, who came recommended by May's friend whose husband had cheated. Paula was professional, kind, but direct. Mrs. Williams, I have to ask, are you sure you want to know the truth? Because once you know, you can't unknow it. I thought about that. Thought about living in ignorance, about continuing to believe in the grandson I'd raised, about trust and faith and the cost of certainty. Then I thought about my cold house, my empty stomach, the equity loan bleeding me dry month by month. I need to know, I said. Paula gave me a sad smile, like she'd heard that answer too many times before, like she knew how this story ended. Give me 2 weeks. It took her 8 days. The report came in a manila envelope, thick with papers and photographs. I sat at my kitchen table with a cup of tea I couldn't drink and opened it with shaking hands. The first document was a background check on Jasmine Nicole Williams, née Thompson. No pregnancy recorded in any medical database. No hospital admissions. No prenatal care visits. No birth. Because there was no baby. There had never been a baby. The photographs came next, and they were worse. Marcus and Jasmine at a casino in Illinois, smiling, drinks in hand, date stamped 2 weeks after I gave them the first $30,000. Marcus at a car dealership, shaking hands with a salesman next to a brand new BMW, not the silver sedan I thought he drove, but a luxury vehicle with a price tag that made my stomach turn. Jasmine wearing designer clothes, carrying shopping bags from stores I couldn't afford to walk into, her belly flat as a board beneath her fitted dresses. There were bank statements, obtained through methods Paula didn't explain, and I didn't ask about. The $30,000 deposit in March, followed by charges at furniture stores, electronics retailers, restaurants I'd never heard of. The $25,000 from the home equity loan, similarly spent within weeks on everything except house repairs. Because they hadn't bought a house. They'd never even looked at houses. The final document was the hardest to read. A credit report showing Marcus and Jasmine were $70,000 in debt from credit cards and personal loans, that they'd been living beyond their means for years, that my money hadn't gone to building a future, but to temporarily plugging holes in a sinking ship. And now, I was sinking with them. I sat with those papers until the tea went cold, until the afternoon light faded into evening, until May let herself in with her spare key and found me sitting in the dark. She turned on the light, saw my face, saw the documents spread across the table, and knew. She knew everything from that look alone. "Oh, Dorothy," she whispered, and pulled me into her arms. I still didn't cry. Not yet. There was too much shock, too much disbelief, too much of my brain refusing to accept what my eyes had seen. The boy I raised, the one I sacrificed everything for, the one I loved with my whole heart, had looked me in the face and lied, had manufactured a pregnancy, a house, a crisis, had taken my savings, mortgaged my home, left me starving in the cold, all so he could buy luxury cars and designer clothes and pretend to be someone he wasn't. And he'd done it knowing I would give him anything, knowing I loved him too much to say no, knowing I would rather suffer than let him down. That's what hurt the most. Not the money, not even the lies. But the calculation behind it all, the cold deliberation of someone who had weighed my love against his wants and decided I was worth exploiting. May stayed with me that night, made me soup I couldn't eat, wrapped me in blankets I couldn't feel, sat beside me while I stared at the wall and tried to comprehend how trust could be murdered so efficiently. Somewhere around midnight, she said the thing I'd been afraid to think. "You need to confront him. You need to get your money back. Dorothy, you need to report this. Report this. Report my grandson for fraud, for elder abuse, for theft. Turn him into a criminal in the eyes of the law. Send him to jail maybe. Destroy his life the way he'd destroyed mine." Could I do that? Should I do that? What would Robert say? What would my daughter say? But then I thought about the cold house, the empty refrigerator, the loan payments I couldn't afford, the retirement I'd carefully saved for, gone. The security I'd worked my whole life to build, stolen, and something cold and clear settled in my chest, something that felt almost like relief. Yes, I could do that, because he'd already made his choice. Now it was time to make mine. If you've ever trusted someone so completely that you'd give them everything, let me know in the comments below. Because what I'm about to tell you, it changes everything. The next morning, I woke up with a clarity I hadn't felt in months. May was already in the kitchen making coffee, and when I walked in, she looked at me with concern, probably expecting to find me broken, crying, defeated. Instead, I sat down at the table and said, "I need to see a lawyer." She blinked, then smiled slowly. "Now you're talking sense." The lawyer's name was James Thornton, and his office smelled like old books and expensive cologne. He was younger than I expected, maybe 40, with kind eyes that had seen enough pain to know when someone was barely holding themselves together. I laid out everything, every document Paula had gathered, every lie Marcus had told, every dollar I'd given him. James listened without interrupting, making notes on a yellow legal pad, his expression growing more serious with each page I showed him. When I finished, he set down his pen and looked at me directly. Mrs. Williams, what your grandson did constitutes several crimes: elder financial abuse, fraud, potentially theft by deception. With this evidence, the district attorney would likely prosecute. But I have to ask, are you prepared for what that means? Criminal charges against your grandson would almost certainly result in jail time. I met his eyes and didn't waver. What are my other options? Civil suit. We sue for return of the $55,000 plus damages, interest, legal fees. It's slower, less aggressive, but it would get you your money back without putting him in prison. He leaned forward. But Mrs. Williams, I need you to understand something. Whether civil or criminal, once you start this process, your relationship with your grandson is over. There's no coming back from this. I thought about that. Thought about the little boy who used to fall asleep on my shoulder during church services, who I'd taught to ride a bike in the park down the street, who'd sobbed into my arms when his mother died. Then I thought about the man who'd let me freeze and starve while he drove a BMW. The relationship is already over, I said quietly. He ended it when he decided I was worth more as a wallet than as a grandmother. James nodded slowly. Then let's get your money back. The legal papers were filed 3 days later. A civil suit demanding full restitution of the $55,000 plus payment of the remaining home equity loan balance, legal fees, and damages for emotional distress. James warned me it could take months, even years, to work through the courts. But he also did something else, something I hadn't asked for but was grateful for. He contacted Adult Protective Services. 2 days after the suit was filed, a social worker named Keisha Johnson came to my house. She was a black woman in her 30s, professional but warm, and she made me tell the story again, recorded it this time, documented the cold temperature of my house, took photos of my nearly empty refrigerator, asked about my medications and whether I could afford them. I admitted I'd been skipping some, cutting pills in half to make them last longer. Her jaw tightened, but her voice stayed gentle. Mrs. Williams, what happened to you is elder abuse. It's more common than people think, and it's often family members who are the perpetrators. We're going to open an investigation. We're also going to connect you with some resources, energy assistance, food programs, things that can help you right now while the legal process works itself out. I felt ashamed, accepting help, admitting I couldn't take care of myself. But Keisha put her hand over mine and said, "You worked your whole life. You raised children. You earned the right to be comfortable in your old age. There's no shame in accepting support when someone has stolen that from you." Marcus found out about the lawsuit from the process server who showed up at his apartment. He called me that night, and I almost didn't answer. But I did, because I wanted to hear what he'd say, wanted to know if there was any remorse, any explanation that could make sense of what he'd done. "Grandma, what the hell? You're suing me? You're actually suing me?" His voice was high, panicked, angry, no apology, no confession, just outrage that I dared to fight back. "You stole from me, Marcus. You lied about a baby, about a house, about everything. You took my savings and my security and left me with nothing. I didn't steal anything. You gave me that money. You wanted to help. I wanted to help my grandson buy a house for his baby. There was no house. There was no baby." "Where did the money go, Marcus? The BMW? The designer clothes? The casino trips?" Silence. Long, heavy silence. Then quietly, "You had me investigated? I had to find out the truth since you wouldn't tell me. You had no right." His voice had gone cold now, detached. "That's invasion of privacy. I could sue you for that." I almost laughed. Almost. "You can try, but I have a lawyer and I have evidence, and I have Adult Protective Services involved now, so go ahead, Marcus. Sue me. See how that works out for you. You're really going to do this? You're going to destroy my life over money?" "You destroyed my life for money," I said softly. "I'm just trying to survive." He hung up. And that was the last time we spoke directly for a long time. But it wasn't the last time I heard from him. 2 weeks later, my phone started ringing. Not Marcus's number, but numbers I didn't recognize. When I answered, it was people I hadn't talked to in years. Distant cousins, old church members, people from the neighborhood, all saying the same things in different words. Dorothy, I heard about what's happening with Marcus. Don't you think you're being a little harsh? He's young, he made mistakes. Family forgives. Or, I always thought you were such a loving grandmother. This lawsuit seems so vindictive. Or, blood is blood, Dorothy. You really want to ruin that boy's future over some money? Marcus was running a campaign, painting himself as the victim, me as the villain. The ungrateful grandmother who couldn't forgive a simple mistake, who valued dollars over relationships, who was cold and cruel and punishing. And people believed him because they wanted to believe him, because it's easier to blame an old woman for being unforgiving than to accept that a young man could be so calculatingly evil. May fielded some of the calls too. She was less polite than I was. I heard her snap at someone. Would you give your grandson $55,000 and let him lie to your face? No? Then shut up and mind your business. The social pressure was intense, exhausting. I stopped answering unknown numbers. I stopped going to church because the whispers and looks were too much. I felt isolated, abandoned by a community I'd been part of for decades. But then something unexpected happened. Paula, the private investigator, called me. Mrs. Williams, I've been doing some more digging, and I found something I think you need to know about. Can I come by? She arrived an hour later with another folder, this one thinner, but somehow more ominous. I kept tabs on Marcus's financial activity like you asked, and I noticed something. There's been a lot of movement in his accounts lately. Large transfers, account closures, setting up new accounts in different banks. He's moving money around, and my guess is he's trying to hide assets before the lawsuit. My stomach sank. Can he do that? Can he just make the money disappear? He can try. But here's the thing. Paula pulled out a document. I also found out he's been talking to a bankruptcy attorney. If he files for bankruptcy before the judgment comes through, your lawsuit could get tied up for years and you might never see your money. So I've already lost. Not necessarily. Your lawyer can file a motion to freeze his assets, stop him from dissipating everything. But Dorothy, there's something else. She pulled out a photograph. It was Marcus and Jasmine at what looked like a travel agency, holding brochures. This was taken yesterday. They're planning a trip, Mexico from what I could gather. And here's the concerning part. Another document. Jasmine's passport application. She's applying under a different name, using her mother's maiden name as her last name. They're preparing to run. The room spun. Run? As in leave the country? I think so. The lawsuit has them spooked, and if they can get out before any judgments are enforced, they could hide out in Mexico indefinitely. There's no extradition for civil matters. I looked at May, who looked at Paula, who looked back at me with sympathy in her eyes. What do I do? You call your lawyer right now. You tell him everything. And you file an emergency motion before they disappear with money they stole from you. James filed the motion that afternoon. An emergency request to freeze all of Marcus and Jasmine's assets pending the outcome of the lawsuit, plus a request for the court to hold their passports. The hearing was scheduled for the following week, and James warned me that Marcus would fight it, that it would be ugly, that I needed to be prepared. But nothing could have prepared me for what happened next. 3 days before the hearing, I got a call from a number I did recognize. Jasmine's mother, Carol, a woman I'd met twice in the 3 years they'd been married. She was crying, almost hysterical. Mrs. Williams, please, you have to drop this lawsuit, please. Marcus is all Jasmine has. If he goes to jail or loses everything, what's she supposed to do? She can't work, she has health problems, she needs him. Carol, I'm sorry for whatever situation they're in, but they put themselves there. They stole from me. They left me starving and cold. I'm not the villain here. But you have Social Security. You have your house. You'll be fine. They have nothing. They're young. They're trying to build a life. Can't you just forgive this? Can't you be Christian about it? Something in me snapped. Christian about it? I gave them everything I had because I loved them. I sacrificed my own well-being to help them build this supposed life they were lying about. And now you want me to sacrifice even more? To just let them rob me and run away? Where's the Christianity in what they did to me? Carol went quiet, then her voice changed, got harder. You're a bitter old woman who can't stand to see young people happy. That's what this is really about. You're jealous. I hung up. My hands were shaking so badly I dropped the phone. May picked it up, saw my face, and wrapped me in her arms while I finally cried. Not the quiet tears from before, but big, ugly sobs that came from somewhere deep inside, from the place where I'd stored all the hurt and betrayal and disbelief. I cried for the grandson I'd lost, for the trust that had been murdered, for the naive grandmother who'd believed family meant something sacred. When I'd cried myself empty, May made me tea and we sat in silence for a while. Then she said, "You know, this is only going to get worse before it gets better, right? They're desperate now. Desperate people do desperate things." She was right. 2 days before the hearing, someone threw a brick through my front window. No note, no message, just shattered glass across my living room floor in the middle of the night. I called the police, filed a report, but there were no cameras, no witnesses, no way to prove who'd done it. But I knew in my bones. May insisted on staying with me until the hearing. She helped me board up the window, helped me clean up the glass, helped me feel less alone in a house that suddenly felt dangerous. "Maybe you should get a security camera," she suggested. "Just in case. In case my own grandson comes back to hurt me. In case anyone comes back to hurt you. Dorothy, you're threatening to take away their escape plan. They're cornered. I'm not trying to scare you, but you need to be careful." The hearing was on a Tuesday morning. James picked me up at 8, drove me to the courthouse, briefed me one more time on what to expect. Marcus's lawyer is going to paint him as a struggling young man who made mistakes but doesn't deserve to have his life ruined. They'll say the money was a gift, that you're having regrets now but can't take back your generosity. They'll make you look bitter, vengeful. You need to stay calm, tell the truth, let the evidence speak for itself. The courtroom was smaller than I expected, wood-paneled and formal. Marcus was already there with his attorney, a sharp-looking man in an expensive suit. Marcus looked different, thinner, older, stressed. For a brief moment, I felt a pang of sympathy, of that old grandmother instinct to protect him from pain. Then he looked at me, and his eyes were flat, emotionless, like I was a stranger he was being forced to deal with. Jasmine sat behind him in the gallery, wearing an outfit that probably cost more than my monthly grocery budget. She glared at me with pure hatred, no attempt to hide it. Carol sat next to her, equally hostile. On my side of the courtroom, May sat alone, but her presence was enough. The judge was a black woman in her 50s, Judge Andrea Morrison, who listened to both sides with an impassive expression. Marcus's lawyer went first, exactly as James had predicted. Painted Marcus as a young man trying to better himself, who'd accepted help from his grandmother, but hadn't understood it was a loan. Claimed the home equity line had been my idea, that Marcus had been hesitant, but I'd insisted. Suggested I was now having financial regrets and unfairly blaming my grandson for my own decisions. Then James presented our case, the private investigator's report, the bank statements, the photographs of Marcus's spending, the evidence of the fake pregnancy, the fake house, the calculated lies. Keisha Johnson's report on my living conditions, the cold house, the empty refrigerator, the medications I couldn't afford, medical records showing my weight loss, my declining health. Judge Morrison's expression changed as the evidence mounted, from impassive to concerned to visibly angry. When James finished, she looked at Marcus with something close to disgust. "Mr. Williams, did you or did you not tell your grandmother you needed money for a down payment on a house?" Marcus's lawyer started to answer, but the judge held up her hand. "I asked your client, counselor." Marcus shifted in his seat. "Yes, Your Honor, but, and was there a house? We were looking, but, yes or no, Mr. Williams?" A pause. "No, Your Honor." "Did you tell your grandmother your wife was pregnant and you needed a larger home for the baby?" His jaw clenched. "Yes." "Was your wife pregnant?" Jasmine's face went red. Marcus looked down. "No, Your Honor." Judge Morrison sat back. "So you lied to your elderly grandmother, extracted $55,000 from her through false pretenses, then spent that money on luxury items while she went without heat and food. Is that an accurate summary?" "Your Honor, my client is willing to set up a payment plan." "I'm not interested in payment plans right now, counselor. I'm interested in whether your client understands the severity of his actions." She looked at Marcus again. "Mr. Williams, do you understand that what you did is elder abuse? That it's a crime?" His lawyer whispered something to him. Marcus nodded stiffly. "Yes, Your Honor." "And do you have anything to say to your grandmother?" For a long moment, Marcus just stared at the table. Then he looked up at me, and for a second, I saw something in his eyes. Regret maybe, or fear, or just the calculation of a man trying to figure out what would play best in front of a judge. "I'm sorry, Grandma. I never meant for things to get this bad." Judge Morrison snorted softly. "You're sorry you got caught. Mrs. Williams, do you accept his apology?" Everyone looked at me. Marcus, Jasmine, the lawyers, May, waiting to see if the grandmother in me would override everything else. If I'd forgive, if I'd let this go. And for a moment, I wanted to. Because he'd called me Grandma. Because he looked young and scared. Because 30 years of loving him doesn't just disappear because he hurt you. But then I thought about the brick through my window, the cold house, the empty refrigerator, the life he'd stolen from me. And I heard myself say, "No, Your Honor, I don't." Judge Morrison nodded, like she'd expected that answer. "I'm granting the motion to freeze assets. All bank accounts, credit cards, and property in the names of Marcus Williams and Jasmine Williams are frozen effective immediately pending the outcome of this civil suit. I'm also ordering both Mr. and Mrs. Williams to surrender their passports to this court within 48 hours. Additionally, I'm referring this case to the District Attorney's Office for Criminal Investigation. This isn't just a civil matter. This is elder abuse, and it needs to be treated as such." Marcus's face went white. His lawyers started objecting, but Judge Morrison cut him off. "Your client committed fraud against a vulnerable elderly person. He's lucky I can't order him held pending trial right now. Make sure he complies with my orders, or he'll find out what I can do. We're adjourned." The gavel came down, and it was over. James squeezed my shoulder. May came down from the gallery and hugged me. And across the courtroom, Jasmine was sobbing while Marcus sat frozen, staring at nothing. We left through a side door to avoid them, but as we were walking to the parking lot, I heard someone running behind us. "Mrs. Williams! Mrs. Williams, wait!" It was Carol, out of breath, her eyes wild. "You just destroyed my daughter's life. Are you happy now? They're going to lose everything. They might go to jail. For what? For money you were stupid enough to give away?" James stepped between us. "Ma'am, you need to back up right now." But Carol wasn't done. "You're a miserable old bitch who couldn't stand to see them happy. You probably weren't even really struggling. This is all just revenge because your grandson didn't call you enough." May got right in her face. "Your daughter and her husband are thieves. They stole from a woman who loved them, and now they're facing consequences. You want to blame someone? Blame them." Security was coming now, called by someone inside. Carol spat at my feet and walked away, still shouting obscenities. I stood there shaking, wondering how my life had become this, how the family I'd loved had turned into strangers who hated me. That night, alone in my house with May in the guest room, I got a text from a number I didn't recognize. When I opened it, my blood ran cold. It was a photo of my house, taken from across the street. Just my house, nothing else. No message, no explanation. Just that image, and the implicit threat behind it. I showed it to May. She called the police immediately, but they said without an explicit threat, there wasn't much they could do. They increased patrols in my neighborhood, told me to call 911 if anything happened, but I could see in their eyes they thought I was overreacting. I wasn't. Because 2 nights later, at 3 in the morning, someone tried to break into my back door. The sound of jiggling metal woke me from a fitful sleep. At first, I thought I'd dreamed it, but then I heard it again. Someone was trying to force the lock on my back door. I grabbed my phone and dialed 911, whispering my address, saying someone was trying to get in. The dispatcher kept me on the line, told me to stay in my bedroom with the door locked, said police were on the way. But the bedroom door didn't lock. It had never needed to, not in all the years I'd lived here. I heard the back door finally give way, heard footsteps in my kitchen. Heavy and deliberate. May's room was downstairs, on the other side of the house. She wouldn't hear anything. I did the only thing I could think of. I opened my bedroom window and screamed as loud as my 67-year-old lungs would allow. "Help! Someone's breaking in! Help!" The footsteps stopped, then started moving faster, running. I heard the back door slam, heard someone taking off through my yard. By the time the police arrived 3 minutes later, whoever it was had vanished into the night. The officers found evidence of forced entry on my back door, took photos, filed a report. They asked if I had any idea who might want to harm me. I told them about Marcus, about the lawsuit, about the frozen assets, and the text message with the photo. One of the officers, a young black man who reminded me painfully of Marcus at that age, looked at me with sympathy. "Ma'am, I'm going to be straight with you. This case is getting dangerous. If your grandson or his wife are desperate enough to try breaking into your home, you're not safe here alone. Do you have somewhere else you can stay?" I looked at May, who'd come running when she heard the commotion. She nodded immediately. "She's staying with me, tonight. We'll come back tomorrow for her things." But I didn't want to leave. This was my house, the home Robert and I had built, where I'd raised my daughter and my grandson. Why should I be the one to run? Why should I be the one to hide? The officer must have seen it in my face. "Pride isn't worth your life, Mrs. Williams. Please, go somewhere safe." So I packed a bag with May hovering anxiously, and we left my house in the dark, leaving behind another piece of my life that Marcus had stolen from me, the sense of safety in my own home. At May's apartment, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about those footsteps in my kitchen, about how close I'd come to confronting whoever had broken in. What would they have done if I'd walked out of my bedroom? Would they have hurt me? Would they have worse? And the bigger question, the one that made my stomach churn, was it Marcus? Was my own grandson, the boy I'd raised, the child I'd loved, willing to hurt me physically to avoid consequences? Had I created a monster? Or had he always been one, and I'd just been too blind with love to see it? If this story is making you uncomfortable, if you're thinking about your own family and wondering who you can really trust, hit that subscribe button, because what happens next, I never saw coming. The next morning, James called. His voice was tense. "Dorothy, we have a problem. Marcus didn't surrender his passport. Neither did Jasmine. The 48 hours are up, and they're in contempt of court." "What does that mean?" "It means the judge is going to issue a warrant for their arrest. But Dorothy, there's something else. I got a call from Marcus's lawyer this morning. He's offering a deal." My heart started pounding. "What kind of deal?" "Marcus will plead guilty to the civil charges, agree to full restitution of the $55,000 plus interest and legal fees, set up a payment plan with your approval. In exchange, you agree not to cooperate with the criminal investigation. Without your testimony, the district attorney probably won't have enough to prosecute." I sat down heavily. "He wants me to let him avoid jail." "Essentially, yes." "Dorothy, I need you to think carefully about this. The criminal case could take years, and there's no guarantee of conviction. Even if he's found guilty, you might never see your money back if he's in prison. This deal guarantees you get paid, and it gets you out of this nightmare. But he gets away with it. He abuses his grandmother, nearly destroys her life, and walks away with a payment plan?" James was quiet for a moment. "That's one way to look at it. Another way is that you get your money back, you get peace, and you get to move on with your life. Justice isn't always satisfying, Dorothy. Sometimes it's just practical." I thought about the broken window, the attempted break-in, the harassment from Carol and the community, the stress that was wearing me down day by day. I thought about how much easier it would be to just take the money and be done with all of this. Then I thought about the next grandmother Marcus would do this to. Because men like him didn't stop. They learned they could get away with it, and they did it again. Maybe not to family next time, but to someone. Some other vulnerable person who trusted the wrong man. "No," I said. "No deal." "Dorothy," I said. "No, James. He doesn't get to buy his way out of this. Tell his lawyer we're going to trial, criminal and civil. Tell him I'm not dropping anything." I heard James sigh, but when he spoke, there was something like respect in his voice. "Okay, I'll let them know. But Dorothy, you need to understand. This means war. They're going to come at you with everything they have." "Let them come," I said, and meant it. The warrant was issued that afternoon. Marcus and Jasmine Williams wanted for contempt of court, failure to surrender passports, and suspicion of planning to flee the jurisdiction. The police went to their apartment, but it was empty, cleared out. They were gone. And somewhere out there, my grandson was running, his wife beside him, both of them fugitives now. All because he couldn't admit what he'd done. All because $55,000 and a life of luxury mattered more than the woman who'd raised him. I stood at May's window, looking out at a city that suddenly felt very small and very dangerous, wondering where Marcus was, what he was planning, and whether I'd made the right choice by refusing the deal. Then my phone buzzed. Another text from an unknown number. When I opened it, the blood drained from my face. It was a photo of me, taken through May's window, taken within the last hour. Someone knew where I was. Someone was watching. And underneath the photo, just 2 words. Last chance. May called the police the moment I showed her the photo. They arrived within 10 minutes this time, took my phone, examined the image, asked questions I barely heard through the roaring in my ears. Someone had followed me to May's apartment. Someone was watching us right now, close enough to photograph me through a window, and that someone was threatening me. The detective who showed up, a woman named Sandra Chen, looked at the photo and then at me with genuine concern. "Mrs. Williams, I've read your file. I know about the lawsuit, the frozen assets, the break-in. This has escalated to stalking and intimidation. We're taking this seriously now. I'm going to have patrol units stationed on this street, and I'm putting out a bolo. Be on the lookout for your grandson and his wife." "You think it's them?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. "The timing suggests it. They're in contempt. They're facing criminal charges, and they're desperate. Desperate people make dangerous choices." She turned to May. "Ma'am, do you have somewhere else both of you can stay? Family out of state? Friends they wouldn't know about?" May nodded slowly. "My son lives in Atlanta. We could go there." But I shook my head. "I'm not running anymore. I'm 67 years old. I've lived in this city my entire life. I'm not going to let them chase me out of my own home. And I'm certainly not dragging May's family into this." Detective Chen looked like she wanted to argue, but must have seen something in my face that told her it would be pointless. "Then we do this the smart way. We set up security cameras here, we keep patrol cars visible on the street, and you two don't go anywhere alone. And Mrs. Williams, if they contact you again, if you see them, if anything feels wrong, you call 911 immediately. Understood?" I understood. I understood I was living in fear in a city I'd called home for 7 decades. I understood that the boy I'd raised had become someone willing to terrorize me. I understood that love wasn't always enough, that blood didn't always bind, that family could be the most dangerous thing in your life. The cameras were installed by that evening, 3 of them covering different angles of May's building, all connected to an app on my phone that would alert me to any motion. The patrol cars came by every hour, officers checking in, making their presence known. And I waited, because I knew Marcus would make a move. Cornered animals always did. It took 3 days. 3 days of jumping at every notification, 3 days of barely sleeping, 3 days of May hovering over me like I was made of glass. On the 3rd night, at 11:47 p.m., my phone buzzed with a motion alert from the front camera. I opened the app with shaking hands. There, standing on the sidewalk in front of May's building, was Marcus, just standing there, staring up at the windows, his face illuminated by the streetlight. He looked haggard, exhausted, nothing like the confident young man who'd sat in my kitchen asking for money 6 months ago. He looked like someone who'd been running and was tired of it. I called 911, gave them the address, told them Marcus Williams was outside, that there was a warrant for his arrest. Then I did something maybe I shouldn't have. I opened May's window and called down to him. "Marcus?" He looked up, and even from 2 stories away, I could see the desperation in his eyes. "Grandma, please, we need to talk. The police are coming." "I know. That's why I'm here. I can't do this anymore." His voice cracked. "I can't keep running. I can't keep looking over my shoulder. I need you to understand." May grabbed my arm. "Dorothy, don't engage with him. Let the police handle it." But I pulled away gently, because despite everything, despite the lies and the theft and the terror, I needed to hear it. I needed to hear him explain how he'd become this person. "Understand what, Marcus? Help me understand how you could do this to me." He ran his hands through his hair, pacing now, agitated. "It wasn't supposed to be like this. It was just supposed to be the first 30,000, just to get us out of debt, and then we'd pay you back. I swear that was the plan. But the debt was bigger than I thought, and the money went so fast, and then there were more bills, and Jasmine wanted things, and I couldn't say no to her. I couldn't disappoint her. But you could disappoint me. You've always been there. You've always forgiven me. I thought you'd understand. that we'd work it out, that you'd never actually sue me. He looked up at me, and there were tears on his face now. You're my grandma. You're supposed to love me no matter what. And there it was, the entitled heart of everything. He'd gambled on my love being unconditional enough to let him destroy me. He'd bet that grandmother would trump self-preservation, that blood would override basic human dignity. And he'd lost that bet. I do love you, I said quietly. I will always love the little boy you were. But Marcus, you're not that little boy anymore. You're a man who made choices, cruel choices, and now you have to face the consequences. That's not me being unforgiving. That's just how the world works. Sirens wailed in the distance, getting closer. Marcus heard them too. He looked around wildly, like he might run again, but then his shoulders slumped. I'm sorry, he said. I'm so sorry, Grandma. I never wanted to hurt you. Yes, you did, I replied, and my voice was steady now, certain. Maybe you didn't want to face that truth, but you knew exactly what you were doing. You knew I was struggling. You knew I was cold and hungry. You knew, and you took more anyway. So don't tell me you didn't want to hurt me. You just didn't care enough to stop. The police cars pulled up, 3 of them, lights flashing blue and red across Marcus's face. Officers got out, hands on their weapons, calling for Marcus to get on the ground. He complied without resistance, let them cuff him, let them read him his rights. As they were loading him into the back of a patrol car, he looked up at me one last time. I didn't look away. I didn't cry. I just watched until the car turned the corner and disappeared, taking my grandson away to face what he'd done. Detective Chen came up to May's apartment after, asked if I was okay, told me Jasmine had been picked up at a motel near the airport with 2 one-way tickets to Cancun in her purse. They'd been planning to leave the country that night. You probably saved yourself a lot of heartache, Chen said. If they'd gotten out of the country, you'd never have seen a dime of that money. But I wasn't thinking about the money anymore. I was thinking about that little boy on Christmas morning, about teaching him to tie his shoes, about the way he used to say, I love you, Grandma, before bed every night I tucked him in. I was mourning all over again. But this time it wasn't for what I'd lost. It was for what Marcus had thrown away. The criminal trial happened 4 months later. Marcus pleaded guilty to elder abuse, theft by deception, and contempt of court. His lawyer tried to get him a suspended sentence, probation, community service. The prosecutor, a young woman named Taylor Brooks, who reminded me of my daughter, argued for prison time. I had to testify, had to sit in that witness box and describe, in detail, what Marcus had done, how he'd lied about the pregnancy, about the house, about everything, how I'd gone hungry and cold while he bought luxury cars, how he'd broken into my home, stalked me, terrorized me when I fought back. The courtroom was packed with people I didn't know, reporters, law students, people who'd read about the case in the news. Marcus's lawyer tried to make me look vindictive on cross-examination. Mrs. Williams, isn't it true that you were angry at your grandson for not visiting you enough? That you felt neglected? I was sad about the distance between us, I said carefully, but I didn't sue him because of that. I sued him because he stole from me. But you could have simply asked for the money back. You could have worked something out privately. Instead, you chose to destroy his life publicly. Isn't that revenge? I looked at the lawyer, then at Marcus sitting at the defense table, still not meeting my eyes. If wanting justice for what was done to me is revenge, then yes, I guess I'm vengeful. But I don't think most people would call it that. I think most people would call it standing up for yourself. The lawyer had no response to that. Judge Morrison, the same judge from the civil hearing, sentenced Marcus to 3 years in prison with possibility of parole after 18 months. Jasmine got 2 years for her role in the scheme and for the stalking. They were also ordered to pay full restitution, the $55,000 plus interest, plus the remaining balance on the home equity loan, plus my legal fees. It totaled nearly $80,000. As they led Marcus away in handcuffs, he finally looked at me. I couldn't read his expression. Regret, maybe, or resentment, or just the blank face of someone who'd gambled everything and lost. I watched him go and felt nothing but tired. The civil case settled a week after the criminal verdict. Marcus's lawyer contacted James and agreed to the full amount, to be paid through wage garnishment once Marcus got out of prison. It would take years, probably decades, to get all my money back, but I would get it back. And more importantly, I got something else. I got my life back. The first thing I did was refinance the home equity loan to lower the payments to something manageable on my Social Security. The court-ordered restitution payments, when they started coming, would go straight to paying it off entirely. The second thing I did was fix my broken window and install a proper security system in my house. The third thing I did was move back home. May didn't want me to. "Dorothy, what if someone comes back? What if they have friends who—" "Then I'll deal with it," I said gently. "But May, I can't live in fear forever. This is my home. Robert and I built a life here. I'm not giving it up." So I moved back into my quiet house with its newly repaired window and its security cameras and its patrol cars that still drove by twice a day for the first month. And slowly, gradually, I started to heal. I went back to church, ignored the whispers and the judgment, and found that there were people who understood, who'd been through similar things, who welcomed me back without questions. I reconnected with old friends I'd let drift away during the years I'd been focused on Marcus. I discovered I'd been so busy being someone's grandmother that I'd forgotten how to just be Dorothy. One Sunday after service, a woman approached me. She was younger, maybe 40, with kind eyes and a gentle smile. "Mrs. Williams, I'm Angela Patterson. I wanted to thank you." I was confused. "Thank me? For what?" "For pressing charges against your grandson, for not letting him get away with it." Her eyes filled with tears. "My uncle did something similar to my grandmother. Stole her savings, left her with nothing. But she wouldn't report him because family doesn't do that to family. She died 2 years later, broke and bitter. I always wished she'd fought back, that she'd shown him there were consequences. You did that. You showed me it's possible to love someone and still hold them accountable." I hugged her then, this stranger who understood, and felt something loosen in my chest. Something that had been clenched tight since the day I'd seen those wedding photos. Permission, maybe. Permission to grieve what I'd lost and still be proud of what I'd done. The energy assistants Keisha Johnson had connected me with helped with my heating bills that winter. The food program meant I didn't have to choose between eating and medications anymore. May came over twice a week for dinner, and we'd watch old movies and laugh at things that weren't funny just because it felt good to laugh again. I took that pottery class I'd mentioned to no one but myself. Met people who knew nothing about lawsuits or grandsons or betrayal. They just knew me as Dorothy, the woman who made lopsided bowls and laughed when they collapsed in the kiln. I was terrible at pottery, but I loved it anyway. Spring came, and with it, something unexpected. A letter arrived, forwarded through James's office. From Marcus, written from prison in careful, cramped handwriting. I almost threw it away without reading it, but curiosity, or maybe old love, made me open it instead. It was short, just 1 page. "Dear Grandma, I know you probably don't want to hear from me. I know I don't deserve your time or attention after everything I did, but I wanted you to know that I've been going to therapy in here, working through why I made the choices I made. The therapist says I had a sense of entitlement, that I thought the world owed me things I hadn't earned, that I used people, especially people who loved me, because I knew they'd let me. She's right. You showed me nothing but love my entire life, and I treated that love like it was worthless, like you were a bank and not a person, like your pain didn't matter as long as I got what I wanted. I can't take back what I did. I can't give you back the security I stole or the trust I destroyed. I can only tell you that I'm sorry, truly sorry, and that I understand if you never forgive me. You don't owe me forgiveness. You don't owe me anything, but I owe you everything. My life, my education, my chance to become something better than I was. And I'm trying, Grandma. I'm trying to become someone you might have been proud of, even if you never see that person. I love you. I always will. And I'm sorry. Marcus." I read the letter 3 times, looked for manipulation, for excuses, for anything that felt like the old Marcus trying to worm his way back into my heart. But all I found was a young man sitting in a cell, finally facing what he'd done. It didn't erase the hurt. It didn't fix anything, but it was something. I wrote back, 1 page, matching his length. "Marcus, I'm glad you're getting help. I'm glad you're taking responsibility. Those are important steps. I forgive you because holding on to anger was poisoning me, not you. But forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting, and it doesn't mean going back to how things were. We can't be who we were. Too much has broken between us. Maybe someday, when you're out, when you've proven through your actions and not just your words that you've changed, we can talk. Maybe we can build something new. But not now. Not yet. I hope you find peace, Marcus. I really do. And I hope you become the man you're capable of being. Grandma Dorothy. I mailed it and didn't expect a response. Didn't need one. The letter was as much for me as it was for him. A closing of one chapter, an acknowledgement that some relationships can't be saved but can be grieved properly. If you've made it this far in my story, if you've stuck with me through all the pain and betrayal, I want you to know something important. Subscribe to this channel because stories like mine need to be told. Elder abuse happens every day, often in silence, often by the people we love most, and we need to talk about it. 6 months after Marcus's sentencing, I got a call from Taylor Brooks, the prosecutor. Mrs. Williams, I wanted to let you know that we've had 4 other cases come forward in the last few months, all elder abuse by family members. All of them said your story gave them the courage to report what was happening to them. You've made a difference. I sat down heavily, overcome. 4 other grandmothers, 4 other parents, 4 other elderly people who'd been suffering in silence and decided to fight back. Because I'd fought back. Because I'd shown them it was possible. Thank you for telling me, I said through tears. Thank you. That summer, I went back to Paris. Used some of the restitution money that had started trickling in to book a nicer hotel this time, to eat at better restaurants, to buy myself things I'd denied myself for years. I stood under the Eiffel Tower again and took a photo, just me, smiling, alive, free. And when I got home, I started volunteering at a senior center, teaching others about financial abuse, about the warning signs, about the importance of protecting yourself even from people you love, especially from people you love. People ask me sometimes if I regret it, if I regret suing Marcus, sending him to prison, destroying our relationship, and I tell them the truth. I regret that he made choices that forced me to choose between his future and my survival. But I don't regret choosing myself, not for a second. Because here's what I learned through all of this, what I wish I'd known years ago. Loving someone doesn't mean letting them destroy you. Setting boundaries isn't cruelty. Demanding accountability isn't revenge. And choosing yourself, protecting yourself, fighting for yourself, even when it costs you someone you love, that's not selfish. That's survival. Marcus will get out of prison eventually. Maybe he'll have changed. Maybe he'll have become the man he promised to be in that letter. And maybe, someday, we'll sit down together and have an honest conversation about what happened. Maybe we'll build something new from the ashes of what we were. Or maybe we won't. Maybe some things stay broken. And that's okay too, because I'm not broken anymore. I'm whole in a way I wasn't before, when I defined myself by how much I could give, how much I could sacrifice, how much I could endure. I'm whole because I learned that I matter. My safety matters, my dignity matters, my life matters. And no one, not even blood, not even love, gets to take that away from me. I'm Dorothy Williams. I'm 67 years old. I survived betrayal by the person I loved most in this world. And I'm still here, still standing, still living, and that, I've come to understand, is the sweetest revenge of all. Not rage, not destruction, just existing, thriving, choosing joy in a world that tried to break you. Living well while they look back and realize what they lost. That's the real victory. I wake up now in my quiet house, make my tea, feed the birds on my porch, and feel something I didn't think I'd ever feel again after all this. Peace. Real, deep, unshakable peace. The kind that comes from knowing you stood up for yourself, from knowing you survived, from knowing you're stronger than you ever imagined. May still comes for dinner twice a week. We laugh more than we did before. Sometimes we talk about Marcus, about the trial, about those dark days. But mostly we talk about other things. The pottery class I'm still terrible at. The book club I joined. The man from church, Harold, who asked me to coffee and made me feel, for the first time in years, like someone worth pursuing. Life goes on. It always does. The seasons turn, the world keeps spinning, and you either let the past define you, or you choose to define yourself. I chose myself. Finally, completely, without apology. And if my story helps even one person do the same, if it gives even one grandmother or grandfather or elderly person the courage to say no more, to fight back against the people exploiting them, then everything I went through was worth it. To anyone out there suffering in silence, being manipulated by family members who think your love makes you weak, it doesn't. Your love isn't weakness, but it also doesn't require you to be a victim. You can love someone and still protect yourself. You can forgive someone and still demand accountability. You can wish someone well from a safe distance. You deserve safety. You deserve dignity. You deserve to live your final years in peace, not in fear or poverty or pain inflicted by the people who are supposed to cherish you. Stand up, speak up, fight back. And if they call you bitter, vindictive, unforgiving, let them. You'll know the truth, that you're not bitter. You're just done being used. You're not vindictive. You're just done being victimized. You're not unforgiving. You've just learned that forgiveness doesn't require self-destruction. The sun sets on my porch these days, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold, and I sit there with my tea and my peace and my hard-won wisdom. I think about Robert sometimes, wonder what he'd say about everything that happened. I think he'd be proud of me, proud that I didn't just lie down and die when someone tried to bury me. I think about my daughter too, Marcus's mother. Wonder if she'd be ashamed of what her son became, or proud of how I handled it. I hope the latter. I hope she's somewhere looking down, nodding, saying, "That's my mama. That's my strong, fierce, unbreakable mama." And I think about Marcus, sitting in that cell, hopefully learning, hopefully changing. I don't hate him. Hate takes too much energy, and I need that energy for living. I just hope he becomes better. For himself, for whatever family he might have someday, for all the people whose lives he'll touch. But whether he does or doesn't, I'm okay. Because my peace doesn't depend on his transformation. My healing isn't contingent on his redemption. I've learned to hold those things separately. Love for who he was, acceptance of who he became, and complete independence from both. The phone rings sometimes, unknown numbers, and I don't answer with fear anymore. I don't jump at shadows. I don't check over my shoulder. I'm just living finally the life I deserved all along. This is my story. The story of how I lost my grandson and found myself, how I was robbed of my savings and discovered my strength, how I was betrayed by blood and learned that the family you choose can be stronger than the family you're born with. It's not a happy ending, but it's not a sad one either. It's just real, raw and honest and true. And if nothing else, it's mine. I survived. I fought back. I chose myself, and I would do it all again.